So, Mayor Bartie, you stated in your testimony that the policy of the Biden administration's Rush to Green agenda will have a negative impact on your community. The latest move by the Biden administration is clearly part of a broader campaign to undercut American energy production. Will you expand on the types of jobs that are created by U.S. LNG and how that will impact how they impact your community?
Well, presently, the LNG that has been ill-affected with the permitting process, the jobs are construction-type jobs that are there as far as I've been apprised. And these jobs, now, in Port Arthur, I know we don't have every citizen with the proper skill level for each craft that's needed out there, but there are some Port Arthurans who have the skill level, and there are some Port Arthurans who are actually working in the facility now. Now, for future jobs, once completion of the facility has actually gone into force, we would have permanent jobs that hopefully citizens in Port Arthur would qualify for those jobs as well. So the economic impact from a facility such as the one that's in particular right now would be a positive economic shot in the arm, so to speak, for the city of Port Arthur. Now, the other LNGs that are there operating now, there are jobs there, and some craft jobs, operator-type jobs, engineering-type jobs, mechanical jobs, welders, carpenters, and even other type laborers. Those jobs in those facilities are actually jobs that Port Arthurans have. Now, we don't have, and I don't have at my disposal, an actual factor as far as the data on the number of individuals who are employed there.
But I'll stop you right there and move on. My time's going to expire. 500 jobs out at Sabine Pass by Cheniere, 500 Zachary contract jobs. That's 1,000 employees. That's 3 shifts, 12-hour shifts. That's a lot of employment. That's just one facility. It's not counting all the other facilities. Future construction jobs for building out facilities. When I think about energy, I think about 4 key words: production, delivery, utilization, and export. Produce the American resources here that we are blessed with. Transmit or deliver those resources through pipelines to facilities like this, but also to utilities that can provide the power that we take for granted in this country, or the refineries that we saw on the energy corridor to refine that product into useful components that make our lives better, and then export to help our friends and allies around the globe lower their carbon emissions and meet their energy needs, especially at critical times when we're facing uncertainty like Ukraine. Let me ask you this. Are you concerned that the uncertainty created by this LNG export ban, an overall campaign against oil and gas, threatens these jobs and economic development opportunities in this community?
Yes, it probably would, because then it would ill affect the ability of that producer of those type goods to be shipped or exported to customers and prospective customers that they actually have on board now. There are some contractual agreements for the future of these facilities and how they will export this product to those other countries.
Those future contracts are in jeopardy if these new permits are paused by this administration, as they have been. My time's expired. I'll now recognize the ranking member, the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Fletcher, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chairman Duncan. And I want to thank all of our witnesses today for your testimony. I found it very helpful to hear from you and, of course, to read your full testimony that you submitted before the hearing. And I really think, as I mentioned in my opening statement, that this pause gives us an important opportunity to think about community engagement. And that's something where I think there really have been demonstrated opportunities for improvement, both in assessing the pause, and certainly that's our purpose here today. And so, Mr. Beard, I was hoping that you could talk to us a little bit about how the existing LNG facilities that are currently operating in Port Arthur and those that are in the construction process have engaged with concerned community members prior to and during the construction and operations, and then maybe if you could share with us your thoughts on how folks involved in those entities could do a better job of engaging constructively with members of the community to understand the concerns and the issues and try to find that common ground that you were mentioning.
Thank you, Ranking Member. First of all, I think all of those companies do try their best as far as they know to publicly engage with the community and talk with community members. But it's more of a function of doing the usual thing, going to the Chamber of Commerce, going to other groups and organizations. But they have to do what we say is to go into the bushes and to the weeds where people really are. Go into the neighborhoods, work with community organizations and the others, because one thing that we do know is that Port Arthur's chronically high unemployment is not being affected, despite all the number of jobs you mentioned, Mr. Chairman. We are not lowering unemployment here. We haven't for decades. So what's happening? If they're engaging, then why aren't people being hired? The mayor mentions the fact about training, but we don't have a shortage of trained people. I've got names of 25 people or better on this phone right here, and their resumes have education all the way from 2-year associates to master's degrees. But they cannot get an interview or even get a chance to test. Well, how can they be hired? And how also can they be hired when the contractors that come in to this city bring their workforce with them? We have this on knowledge of people who left Port Arthur to come back and get a job, but they will work with another company when that job was over. Hey, why don't you come with us? We're going to be moving to that big project in Port Arthur. So that displaces our workforce. There's not nearly enough being done, because if it were, unemployment figures would change.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. I think that's very helpful for all of us to take back. I think we're going to get a chance to ask more questions. So I want to turn quickly my next question with the time I have left to Mayor Bartie, because in your testimony you talked about opportunities that are created from these positions. And as we've just heard, maybe more of them could be coming to the citizens of Port Arthur. Do you think that, could you talk a little bit about opportunities to bring these facilities and those who are sort of bringing this development, how the city could work with them, with the operators to improve and mitigate some of the issues that Mr. Beard has talked about?
Yeah, on the job opportunities, I'm going to be correct on what you would like for an answer. There are what we call IDAs that are actually in place with facilities, with industrial facilities, and there are certain numbers of Port Arthurans that are actually asked, or the IDA stipulates a certain percentage of Port Arthurans to be employed during a specific period of time. If they are not according to the IDAs, then there is a penalty fee that particular industrial employer would actually pay to the city for not fulfilling that particular tenet or article in that agreement. Now, futuristically, with the LNGs, and with this one LNG in particular, whenever I came in office in 2019, they were beginning the process. The others were already there, and I visited with them, but those agreements were already in place and functioning. We are hoping that with the present facility that is being constructed and the future of, I think it's the train number 2, I think that's the proper name for it, that we would have a greater number of citizens prepared, even working with Lamar State College Port Arthur, to help provide citizens with the crafts necessary so that the citizens of Port Arthur would be attractive for employment in these facilities. And again, as I said, if they are not employing Port Arthurans as the agreement says, then there is a penalty that the company is assessed.
Thank you. I have exceeded my time, so Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back for this round.
Yields back. I'll now
Means less revenue to the city.
It would. However, now the pause that I think that we're in question right now hasn't become totally effective. It's not in effect because I think the pause is for phase 2 and not it doesn't involve the current work that's going on. But however, the students that we are educating now in the next 24 months, if this doesn't change, then it will have an ill effect, and the negative impact would be upon us.
Well, it does
Well,
have
the
a,
first thing, going back to what was said earlier about, I think it might have been the chair mentioned traveling through Louisiana and seeing all of those facilities and seeing the effect of that. But I wonder, did he take a moment to stop in those communities and ask about the health effects of those people there that live in Mossville and that live in other communities that are near there that are suffering from the pollution of industries that are already there? They're inland 50 miles. There are no LNGs there. So they're not affected by LNG, but they're affected by the pollution coming from Sasol and some of the larger facilities that have been built there. With regard to what programs happen, we got to go back to the beginning. It starts at the point of extraction out in West Texas in the Permian, where the ancestral and tribal lands of many native peoples is being used, and even those American citizens and people like ourselves whose lands are being taken from them through eminent domain, simply to satisfy this need for oil. You talked about the fact earlier even of these facilities, but there are 25 facilities, some in some form of construction, some are in permitting, but all of them are going forward. Yet we already have at least 8 to 11 of those facilities already built. So where this pause would affect the export and shipment of gas already, with more coming online, which is said to be almost double, if not triple, by 2027, how are we hurting the country or hurting our friends if we are able to export more oil and gas just the same? Makes no sense. Keystone Pipeline, as you mentioned, that's just one of 4 that was affected. The others are still terminating right here in Nederland, Texas, just down the way. So we have to have agreements that start from the beginning at the extraction all the way to communities like Port Arthur. It's in the 95th percentile in terms of air quality. What that means is this: there are only 5% of cities in the country have worse air than we do. And that air has some of the largest emitters of benzene and other toxins than virtually any place in the country. That's the price we pay. So when you go through these communities, you have to understand and know what they've been suffering for decades, but yet America still depends on them. It talks about the national interest. Well, Texas likes to talk about, as you know, Congressman Weber, seceding from the Union. We haven't done that yet, but we're part of that union, and we're part of Texas, and that suffering continues. And those things have to be considered, those impacts, as well as the community impacts, as well as the lack of jobs. How many of those people that are coming out of your programs at Lamar State College are actually being hired? Who's tracking that? Who's tracking tax abatement, Mayor, to make sure that tax abatement is actually putting those people to work? I want to go back to what, and I'll stop, what President Reagan said. We trust, but we want to verify. Where's the verification? How do we know they're actually putting those people to work? And what jobs are they working in? That's critical. We have to do the full measure of making sure that we get the benefits if you're going to have the pain and suffering inflicted by the pollution and all that's happening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beard. And it sounds to me like some of the things that you're talking about, as you said, are beyond the scope of LNG and involve